We're back. It's the 80s Overload on Penn's Peak Radio with me, Carrie, and we have a very special guest on the show today. Tom Keifer of Cinderella is joining us. Hi, Tom.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Very, very good.
Thanks for taking some time out of your busy schedule to hang out with us.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So you're on the tour bus right now?
Yeah, we're heading to Milwaukee. We have a show tomorrow night in Milwaukee. We just played Pittsburgh last night, so...
So you're going to be hitting up Penn's Peak on June 17th.
Yes, and we are looking forward to playing there. That's one of my favorite venues. We've done it a couple of times with Cinderella, and it's always a great crowd, and really looking forward to it.
And you're actually from Pennsylvania. You're from Philly, right?
Yeah, I grew up right outside of Philadelphia and lived there till I was probably about 20 or 21, and then I moved over to South Jersey and lived there for a number of years, and now I'm in Nashville.
Ooh. Being that you're from Philly, is there anything that you look forward to most when you're coming to a gig in Pennsylvania?
Tasty cakes.
Anything else, you think?
Of course, you can always get a good cheesesteak, too, when you're coming back up.
Oh, absolutely. Do you have a cheesecake preference in Philly?
I like Pat's. Pat's is pretty awesome.
Well, you actually, it's weird to even be calling it a new album because it actually came out 2 years ago. But you released The Way Life Goes just about 2 years ago, and you kind of fit right into our format here at our station because we play classic rock, we play country, and we play 80s. So there's definitely you kind of fit right in there. There's obviously a variety of influences from different areas of the music world in your solo work. Not many people, I think, could really make that work. So how do you think you make your music that diverse and make it mesh?
I don't know. I just tried to play music that I feel and what's, it's just, I grew up on bands that were very diverse and had a lot of different dynamics and styles on their records, like the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin. Mm-hmm. And I always liked that kind of diversity on a record where, one song's acoustic, maybe a little on the countryside, and then the next one's hard and driving, and even Zeppelin would mix those kind of colors up in the same song sometimes, where they'd go from acoustic and then bang, the next part of the song would be heavy electric, and I just love those kind of dynamics, and I had great teachers growing up in the 70s listening to those bands, and, it's just where I learned how to write and play music and sing, so, it's just the kind of music that I love.
And from what I understand, much of what you were writing in the 10 years prior, because you were writing this album for about 10 years before you released it. And
yeah.
You never really intended it for it to be an album?
Well, we started making the record I was on the heels of a record deal that had gone south and ended up in the courts with Cinderella. And when I started making this record, it wasn't making a record, it was about just making some music because I didn't want to deal with record companies or labels, and there was no label involved in the beginning when we made the record. We made it without a label involved. And I started writing with my wife and some other friends of mine in Nashville, and it was just like, let's go out and record a track here and record a track there. And it was like this labor of love over 10 years mm-hmm. where, I would take long breaks from it and go on tour with Cinderella and come back and work on it. It was kind of on and off, to the point where one day I woke up and I was like this pile of really great tracks sitting there, and I was like, man, there's like a record in there. So we picked like 14 songs that made sense together and mastered it, and then we started shopping for a record company or for a record deal to release it. And that's how the record came about. And, we kind of backed into it, not even really thinking it was a record to start with.
Things in the music industry change a lot, especially in 10 years. Was there any sort of material that you had to adapt kind of to the current musical climate or like your personal tastes even?
I'm not one that really ever does that, Like I said, I just try to play what's true to me and what I love, and that's what I always did with Cinderella, and I just carried that over into this record too,
Right. how is it different writing an album solo as opposed to with your band?
Well, I never wrote with Cinderella. I wrote all those songs pretty much myself. And writing with for the solo record, I did bring in other songwriters because I'm based in Nashville now, and it's just a town full of amazing songwriters. And I felt like I needed some, a shot in the arm. And my wife's an amazing songwriter and producer too, and she wrote a lot of the stuff on the record and co-produced the record with Chuck Turner and I. And I worked with some other really great writers in Nashville. So that was a different approach for me in terms of collaborating on the writing. And that was really cool. And I think it brought in some new energy to it.
So that was new for you, writing with other people as opposed to writing with yourself.
Yeah, kind of, ever since I started writing before Cinderella was formed, I just really wrote on my own. And when I started working on this project, it was, just different because I was in a town just full of amazing songwriters, and it was cool to collaborate at that point for me.
Oh, cool. Is there anyone you haven't gotten to work with yet that you'd really like to?
Well, I'd love to join the Rolling Stones. I'm joking, but I'm kind of half serious. I mean, that's one of my heroes there. It'd be cool to at least sit in with them once.
Hey, it's totally possible. You
never know, right? Keep my fingers crossed.
You've definitely made a lot of things happen that seem almost impossible. You went through a lot of stuff with your vocals. A lot of people you would think would kind of take a break from music at that point. Was there anything that really kept you going?
Well, I think what kept me going through that was I was told I would never sing again, and
wow.
It was pretty close to that reality because most people that get that paralysis of the vocal cords don't sing again. Mm-hmm. And as I was struggling with trying to make that work, because there's no medical cure for it, you have to work with coaches and speech pathologists and try and figure out how to make it work. It's not an exact science. Mm-hmm. Like I said, most people do not recover from it. So while I was struggling with all that, I was thinking about other, career choices.
Right.
And I couldn't picture myself doing anything else because from the time I was 8 years old, I was playing guitar and singing songs. So I think that's what drove me to really work and overcome the voice issue.
Because even though you were kind of laying low during the 90s, you guys were Cinderella was still playing shows pretty much right through the 90s into the 2000s.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a break between 2004, which I believe was our last tour for the fourth record, Still Climbing. And then, the whole grunge and Seattle thing came in, and all the bands in the 80s left their deals, and there was this mid-90s crisis for us all. And but then we reformed in 98 as a result of that record deal that I mentioned. And we started touring again, and we started working on a new record, and that's the one that ended up in the courts, and the record never got made.
Yeah.
And that's like, when I started working on the music for this solo record, it's like I said, it was not really intended to be a record. It was more of a healing process of just like making music for the sake of music and not dealing with lawyers and record companies and people breathing down your neck. And, it was refreshing to do that. Although sometimes someone breathing down your neck helps a little bit because in 10 years to make a record is, a little over the top, I guess. But
yeah.
That's the path that this record took, and, it worked out well. So life takes the course it's meant to take, right?
Yeah. I was going to say it's got to be kind of cathartic making music for yourself as opposed to for a company or for someone else.
Well, it was freeing in the sense that you felt like you could leave no stone unturned in terms of getting the exact performance you want, the exact mix that you want, because you're not on a deadline. I mean, when we were making the records under Mercury with Cinderella, we were still making that music for ourselves. We weren't allowing people to tell us what kind of music we could make or anything. It was always what we wanted to do, but you're on a time limit. because you're on their budget and you're on their schedule. So, you know, if the mix isn't quite what you wanted, sometimes you have to say, okay, you know, that's, you know, we got to let a few things go here because, you know, the record company needs to get it out. So that was the freeing part of this, was you really felt like you could just leave no stone unturned. But in terms of the style of music, we never allowed anyone to tell us what we were going to play.
Right, right. And you shouldn't. You shouldn't have to cater, because this is, you know, writing isn't something that's forced. You can't force it. So, you know, being under pressure to write something for a record company within a timeline is kind of a ridiculous concept when you think of it.
Yeah, it's why I was quite aware of the sophomore jinx when our first record started exploding. And it's why I started writing the second record while we were on tour. And we toured for almost 2 years behind that first record. And I knew that when we came off the road that they were going to just be beating on us for another record. So I got ahead of the curve, and I just started writing when we were on the road. And it was a great place for inspiration, because it was the first time I'd really left Philadelphia, and I was traveling on a tour bus, all these new experiences, and it was a very inspirational time. And rather than just, you know, turning into like party guy and not think about the next record, I was buckling down and writing and doing demos on the road. I had what we used to call a porta studio.
Oh.
which looking back on it was not all that as portable as the studios today, because it was a giant road case that we used to roll into the hotel room, and I would do like this giant case, right? And it was like maybe an 8-track at best, right?
Uh-huh.
And now you can probably record 80 tracks on your watch. Porta Studio is kind of humorous now, to thinking back that that's what we called that. But that's what I was doing on the first tour, writing the Long Cold Winter record and doing demos in the hotel rooms. And also on the Long Cold Winter tour, I was ahead of the curve writing for Heartbreak Station and doing the same thing. So
yeah,
that way, you know, being prepared when you come off the road, because the record company, they're going to start cracking on you.
Yeah. I mean, bathrooms do really have some good acoustics in them.
They do. It's the best place to sing.
So you've been touring for about the past 2 years now, since your album came out.
Yes.
And is there anything, like, do you guys switch up your shows every night, or do you kind of do the same thing at all of your shows?
Well, we've been changing it. When we start to get to the point where we feel it's not fresh anymore, we change it. The set's a little different this year than last year. Mm-hmm. There's only so much room for changing it, because there's X amount of Cinderella songs that you know, we have to play because people want to hear those. And then there's, you know, some obvious ones off of the new record that need to be in there too. So I found over the years that it's best to just give, you know, the songs that people want to hear. It makes for the best show, because when everyone's out there singing along, it's such a magic night, you know. So I've never been one of those musicians who walks up on stage and it's like, I'm not playing any of my hits tonight.
Yeah.
So we do all the Cinderella hits or classics, or, I mean, I hear it called a lot of things these days. All the Cinderella favorites, let's call it that. Yeah, and stuff from the new record, the singles that we released, and a couple other album tracks. And it's a fun show, very high energy. A lot of people ask me, you know, what can we expect from the solo performance? And I always say it's, you know, what you're used to seeing with me as a performer with Cinderella is pretty much the same thing you're going to see. And I have an amazing band. It's very high energy, loud guitars, screaming, lots of sweat, and it pops.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
We're looking forward to rocking Penn's Peak, I'll tell you.
Awesome. Just one last question for you. Considering this is an 80s show, do you have any really crazy experiences from the 80s that you share with us? Maybe something that you look back on and say that would only happen in the 80s?
Well, all of it, really. But there's one, I've been asked this a lot lately, and the story that I've been sharing is, when we were on the Night Songs tour and we were opening for David Lee Roth, when we were done playing, we got on our bus and we were leaving town, and we were hungry and we wanted to eat, and the bus driver pulled over to a Denny's. Well, little did we know he'd gotten lost and just gone in a loop, and he pulled us into a Denny's that was right next to the arena where David Lee Roth was still playing.
Oh, no.
And the show was letting out as we were eating, and a giant crowd started gathering right outside this giant plate glass window where we were sitting eating. And the manager of the Denny's, because there was a lot of people, locked the doors, and we were starting to freak out because, it was a big crowd.
Right.
And they started beating on the window, and they broke through the plate glass window and came and chased us out the back door through the kitchen.
No way.
And that would only happen in the 80s.
That's a great story.
Yeah, it was fun and scary all at the same time.
I'm sure it was.
Our bus driver never got lost again.
Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us today, Tom.
Thank you for having me on, and thanks for having us to Penn speak. Like I said, I love that venue, and we're really looking forward to it.
Well, we're looking forward to it, too. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
You too.